Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to be here and present in the 5th International Conference on Management, Education, Social Sciences and Innovation 2024. Our topic today is about the association between social media use and mental well-being among Vietnamese adolescents. In this topic, we cover two major concepts, that is social media and well-being. Social media are normally regarded as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Salo, or YouTube, whereas well-being is classified into emotional well-being and psychological well-being. Emotional well-being refers to immediate states of contentment and satisfaction, whereas psychological well-being refers to the human self-realization in the long run. Available literature provides inconsistent findings about the correlation between social media use and well-being. Some studies conclude negative correlation between these two variables, such as higher screen time are associated with worsened mental well-being among adolescents. Other study concludes positive correlation with the companionship aspect of social media, reduce the perceived social isolation. Other study concluded a weak or non-high effect, that is the weak correlation between social media use and psychological well-being, as well as total mental well-being. But there's a significant connection between social media use and emotional well-being. Next, we move on to the cultural consideration in Vietnam. There's a lack in representativeness regarding cultural diversity. Existing literature mainly discusses the Western context, whereas the collectivist Asian culture might be a factor affecting the correlation between social media use and mental health among adolescents. Also, previous study in Vietnamese context discussed mainly distress, anxiety, and stress as negative outcome with limited resources about life satisfaction as well as well-being. Therefore, this research aimed to contribute a more comprehensive outlook on the relationship between these two variables and suggest implications for healthier use of social media. Therefore, we come up with a hypothesis as following. There's an association between social media use and mental well-being among Vietnamese adolescents. We choose to follow two theoretical frameworks. The first one is a social comparison theory proposed by Festinger in 1954, which highlight the individual determination of their self-worth through self-comparison with others. The second one is a socio-cognitive theory proposed by Ventura 1986 and 2001, explaining that behavior, cognition, and environmental factor interact together to influence on an individual action and mental state. Now let's move on to the methodology.
This research was conducted using a mixed approach, including quantitative and qualitative method. Using numerical and open data, we would investigate the correlation between social media use and mental well-being among Vietnamese teenagers. Data in this study was collected through an online questionnaire, and by using an online questionnaire, we aimed at teenagers who had an electronic device connected to the internet. Therefore, participants would have a high chance of using social media. And the survey was sent to Vietnamese students aged 16 to 18 with mixed genders who enrolled at high schools in different areas in Vietnam. To ensure statistical validity, a sample size of 200 students was at first targeted, representing diverse genders, ages, and living areas. However, this survey was conducted during the summer holiday, so only 128 students agreed to join in, which 110 of them filled in enough information for the research. And the mental well-being was assessed using the Sterling Children's Well-being Skills, the SCWBS, which is a validated tool designed to estimate children's mental well-being age from 8 to 15 years old by Little and Carter 2015. The SCWBS included 15 positively worded short items, in which 12 questions measure mental well-being and 3 others measured social desirability. social media use was investigated in terms of types of social media and time spent on it. Participants reported which social media they used and how much time they spent on it, ranging from 0 to 7 hours or more per day. And consent form and a clear provision of information on the studies were given at the beginning of the questionnaires. Participants were reminded that they could withdraw from the research if they felt uncomfortable. Data in our study was collected from an online questionnaire on Qualtrics exam, including closed and open questions. Collected data would be analyzed using statistical package for the social science SPSS version 27.0. Open data in the questionnaire were analyzed to find out how social media influences adolescents' mental well-being. Next, we move on to results.
The results of our study consist of two main parts: statistical analysis and thematic analysis. For statistical analysis, we have demographic features of the mean age of 16.7 with standard deviation of 0.7. Specifically, 41.8% of our participants are 16-year-old, 47.3% of our participants are 17, and only 10.9% of our participants are 18. Most of our participants live in urban areas, accounting for 70%. 14.5% live in suburban areas, and the same percentage can be accounted for rural areas. Only 1% of our participants live in mountainous and remote areas. The two main gender included in the study are 30% male and 67.3% female, and only 2.7% of our participants are unidentified in genders. The time spent on social media is on average 4.7, with standard deviation 1.9, indicating a lot of time on social media use on a daily basis. The types of common social media include Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Zalo, and other few platforms. 100% of our participants use social media, and very high percentages were recorded for usage of different social media types, ranging from 82 to 95%. The results for the levels of mental well-being, emotional well-being, and psychological well-being were compared between those of UK adolescents and Vietnamese adolescents. Specifically, UK adolescents' mental well-being was on average 43.95 with standard deviation 7.29, according to Little and Clutter in 2015. Meanwhile, Vietnamese adolescents' mental well-being was on average 41.14, standard deviation 7.29, which is slightly lower than those of the UK. The mean as well as standard deviation scores of emotional well-being and psychological well-being were respectively 21.28 for 0.26 for standard deviation and 19.85 and 4.77 for standard deviation. This indicated higher levels of emotional well-being than psychological well-being on average. All of the three variables, mental, emotional, and psychological well-being, were normally distributed, and this was affirmed by a test of normality by Kolmogorov-Smirnov. The slide shows two diagrams of correlation between mental well-being, levels of time spent on social media, and emotional well-being, and levels of time spent on social media. The Spearman's test of correlations showed a weak negative association between social media use and mental well-being, with the RHO coefficient equals negative 0.9119 and P coefficient equals 0.046, which is smaller than 0.05, indicating a significant coefficient. Another weak negative relationship between social media use and emotional well-being was also shown, with the RHO coefficient equals negative 0.24 and the P coefficient equals 0.012, which is smaller than 0.05, also indicating a significant correlation. However, there was no significant relationship between social media use and psychological well-being, as the P coefficient was 0.348, larger than 0.05, indicating a non-significant correlation. Lastly, open data analysis, in specific, self-reported data about the association between social media use and mental well-being. For the open question of whether the participants think that social medias have impacts on their mental well-being, indicate 70% saying yes and 30% saying no. 60% of the participants indicate only negative influence, and 7% indicate only positive influence, such as happiness and relaxation. Lastly, 3% indicate both positive and negative impacts of social media use. Our thematic analysis quotes some of our participants' experiences of using social media and how social media affect their mental health. With stress, when spending too much time on social media, I feel stressed, tired, and lose motivation to do anything. Depression, social media made me feel depressed and I do not want to do anything. Peer pressure and demotivation, I felt upset when inquiring a lot of negative information on social platforms. Attention deficiency, as well as common negative influence on physical health, such as headache, backache, eye problems, and sleep deprivation. Now we're going to move on to our discussion part.
Now on to the discussion part. First, teenagers view a wide range of social media. Social media has become very popular among the youth. They spend a lot of time on online social networking, about 4.7 hours a day on average. However, this finding might be caused by the fact that 70% of the participants come from urban areas where there's a lack of outdoor space and activities for them. From the mentioned results, it can be seen that Vietnamese levels of mental well-being is less than the UK's ones. A weak negative association between social media use and mental well-being, negative 0.19, emotional well-being, negative 0.24, but no significant relationship between social media use and psychological well-being. These results support the social cognitive theory proposed by Albert Bandura, 1986, 2001. A majority of these students reported a relationship between social media use and mental well-being, 70%. Although a small number of them share positive influence of social media on their mental health, most of them reported negative influence such as tiredness, depression, peer pressure, attention deficiency, and demotivation. They are aware of the negative influence on mental health, but they still spend a lot of time on social media. To conclude this research, teenagers view a wide range of social media despite they are aware of the negative effects of excessive use of social media. They continue using them at high level of frequency. The research findings back up the social cognitive theory and social comparison theory in Vietnamese context that the information adolescents are exposed to affects their emotions, however, not their mental well-being in the long run. This study is significant in the context of Vietnam as it provides an insightful result from the teenager reflection, which is meaningful for any campaigns for universal well-being development. Background research should explore the confounding factors such as socio-economic background and purpose in using social media sites to clarify the connection among variables. That said, the findings indicates a bridging connection in psychological impact. This is our reference, and thank you for listening.